I want to go back to something you said earlier about everything going according to plan to Israel. October 7th itself was kind of maybe didn't want that to happen exactly, but
Right.
they were
Well, not on that scale. I don't think they were clearly. I really don't think they were expecting that.
Right. But Netanyahu was wanting an excuse.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, and he got it.
Yeah, so do you still believe that this is going according to plan? Because what we're seeing is just chaos right now in Syria.
Right.
Which I guess in the short term is good. It takes the tension off all these other fronts that Israel is starting. But having chaos in Syria on your border is also not good, right? Isn't Israel going to be in trouble in the near future?
No.
Won't this force turn on them? There's also something you said in the last podcast that you said that HTS and Israel had some type of relationship, that HTS liked Israel. But then I'm also hearing things that HTS is saying that we're going to march on to Jerusalem and they are anti-Israel. So, I mean, what's going on there?
Yeah. Well, clearly, actually, the Al-Julani, the leader of HTS, has repeatedly said that he sees Israel as a friend. And,
really?
Yeah. And again, remember, they I told you about that incident where some of his men held up a sign in Hebrew thanking Netanyahu for killing Nasrallah. So it's there. I think it's policy, but and it's been really the policy of Al-Qaeda for a long time. Remember earlier in the first few years of the civil war that broke out in 2011 in Syria, Israel directly supported Al-Qaeda. Where Al-Qaeda was fighting close to their borders. So there has been cooperation. Now, I think Israel understands that these people in the long run are not their friends. In the short run, they've made an alliance with Israel. Their leadership has. For these people, again, the priority, the first enemy, the one that they want to destroy above all, is the Shia. So you're seeing that, these all kinds of awful news reports coming out from Syria of massacres in Alawite villages. Recently, I saw something about a bus driver that was killed because he had a photograph of Nasrallah in his bus. So that's, these are the people they're going after. And like I've said, I think they simply want to purify Syria and all the territories they control of this, what they regard as a heretical sect. So, yeah, they want the Christians to go too. So they can get rid of the Christians, can get rid of the Shias. And then I think, the enemy will be Israel, and Israel understands that. So they know that they're not, in the short run, they can work with them, and they have been working with them. In the long run, they're potentially an enemy. So what Israel does not want to happen is for a strong Sunni extremist state to be established in Syria. What they want to happen is for chaos to reign. And I don't think that they're afraid of that. I think, I've heard some others argue that that's going to be a disaster for Israel. I don't think it is because, a chaotic Syria is not a threat to Israel. It's something that provides them with all kinds of excuses to take territory, and it doesn't present any kind of military threat to Israel. They're various bands fighting each other. They're just all for it. Yeah, let them kill each other. That's what they want. I think that's always been Israeli policy. They don't want to have these unified states. So of course they didn't. That's why they went after Iraq, and that's why they went after Syria, and they really they got what they wanted in those places.
Do you think Iran is going to get heavily involved now in Syria if Shias are being massacred, and that they'll just say it's gone, and also Hezbollah, we just leave them out to dry?
I don't think they can, really. They just don't have the power to do it on their own. The Russians are clearly leaving, and I think the Iranians are too. They're obviously, this is not what either of them desired. It is a disaster, but they just have to accept the reality.
So it's just going to descend into chaos, sort of a state of nature type of situation.
Yeah,
And
yeah. There's always a chance that Al-Julani or somebody else will rise up and impose some kind of order. It's not impossible. But if current trends hold, that's what we're seeing. It seems to be very chaotic right now in Syria, and it's probably only going to get worse.
right, no, it doesn't sound good. There's a lot of confusion in the beginning. The Western media is showing pictures and videos of people celebrating and waving flags. We're free of the Assad regime.
Yeah.
And then I go on Twitter just this morning and I saw just public executions, massacres, horrible things happening. So
Right.
it sounds.
Well, the West is just stupid. I mean, again, Israel knows what it's doing. I think Israel's not surprised by any of this, and they're actually happy with it. I mean, they've made this cruel calculation. They made it a long time ago. And there are, I think, like the neocons within the U.S. government, they understand too. But they also understand that they got to pretend that this is about human rights. It's just those people that bought that argument. Their stupidity knows no end. It's just every one of these regime change operations has ended in disaster.
Right.
And it just seems like, well, this time it'll work. Of course it won't. It just never does. And I just don't see how we can fall for that. But, you get these media talking about, yeah, this is finally good, for human rights in Syria. Yeah, really? And none of this should have been a surprise. You knew who these people were. This is actually, HTS is designated by our government as this, as a terrorist organization. They won,
Right. I mean, Al-Julani has a $10 million bounty on his head, and for anybody that can give information that could lead to his arrest or capture, well, I got some information for the State Department. They want to give me that $10 million.
Right. Well, somehow I don't think you're going to get it, but
right. It's just hard for me to believe that we had this goal of regime change in Syria for so long, that we wanted to overthrow Assad, but did we not have a plan of what to do when it happened? It was the same thing in Libya. We got rid of Gaddafi and then just chaos. And then
this plan, like this list of targets, it basically, it came from, I believe it was Wolfowitz, who was a high-ranking member of the State Department under the George W. Bush administration. But I believe, he was the one, if not, somebody closely associated with him, wrote a paper back in the 1990s, kind of spelling out what it was the Israeli strategy, but it was the U.S. should adopt this Israeli strategy and to remake the Middle East. Instead of trying to live with these regimes, let's just overthrow them. And well, it's more than the Middle East. It extended to North Africa and even into Africa, to sub-Saharan Africa. But the main targets, of course, were Iran, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon. Mm-hmm. There are just two left on the list, and that's Iran.
But it was just to overthrow them, and the goal was chaos. There wasn't.
Yeah.
Did the State Department have a goal of should we install some other type of government?
Because, I think that's stated, but they always understood, and they've seen what's happened. Say have of course, the stated goal, and I think it may have been stated in that paper too, is to install regimes that are favorable. But obviously, they don't have the ability to do that. You could say maybe they got that partially in Iraq, but not really. I mean, the Iraqis are asking the Americans to leave, and they're not. It's just like,
yes, it surprises me that there's statements saying that we're going to go stabilize the region now, but it doesn't seem like there's any plan. And is the plan now to support Al-Julani and hope that he's moderate and just tell him, hey, don't massacre all the Christians and Shias and Alawites there?
Yeah.
Is that the plan?
Yeah. There'll be a certain amount of hand-wringing and whitewashing. We're seeing it already. But, just think about what's happened in Ukraine. It's just like these, again, for the 8 years leading up to the SMO, the Ukrainians were clearly shelling civilians in Donetsk. And, every other every week there would be a casualty, another child killed, an elderly couple killed, and the news, it just never made it into the mainstream. It just, as far as they're concerned, it didn't exist. And of course, it's continued with the war. To this day, the Ukrainians are shelling these civilians. They're just obviously targeting them. And not just shelling, but also, with drones. And FPV drones, what you're hitting. They're looking there, they see a civilian car, they just go and they kill it. And there's a family in there. But it's just simply the news is suppressed. And that's, I think, what we'll see in Syria. It doesn't fit the narrative. They've already decided what the narrative was. And so, they'll get away with a lot. And maybe it gets to some point where it can't be hidden entirely, but then it'll be spun. It'll somehow be Assad's fault, right? That's how it'll be explained. The narrative can withstand, is impervious to reality. Let's just put it that way.